That's an intriguing and self-reflective concept, and it lends itself beautifully to a poetic or ironic opening. Here are a few possible directions you could take for the beginning of your video essay, depending on the tone you want. The meta opening. If you asked me to help you write this essay, I probably could, in seconds. But if I do, what happens to you? Cut to a moment of silence or a blank screen. This isn't about me. It's about what you lose when I make things too easy.
Everything is achievable through technology. Better living, robust health, and for the first time in human history, the possibility of world peace. I would like to personally introduce you to the city of the future.
Humanity has for hundreds of years now looked towards the future as the savior of the mundane. Technology and the inventions previously only present in our imagination has promised us to find ways of alleviating the pains and struggles of everyday existence. What we've always believed as laborious yet necessary aspects of our lives, the future assures us will evaporate in time, leaving us with nothing but our pleasures, all of the good and none of the bad. Picture a life where there's no longer any need to cram your memory full of information about history, when there's no longer any need to dedicate massive amounts of time for learning, when there's no longer any need to scratch and dig out the facts about any given topic, when there's no longer any need to think for yourself. This is the door we're knocking on right now in our time inside the growing bubble and looming threat of the promised convenience of generative AI and machine learning. Why do anything annoying or cumbersome by yourself when an artificial assistant can do it all for you? Why strain yourself when you have everything right at your fingertips, at the push of a button, at the tip of your tongue? There's always ways of making life more convenient, and anything that manages to simplify our lives surely means we'll have more free time to ourselves, more time for productivity, more time to do what we love. Right? We all want more time on our hands, but I fear, even now as the false promises of the tech billionaires begin to crack, showing what's truly underneath, I fear how we still put faith in one of the most foundational lies in modern history. The lie that says, more advanced technology always makes life better. We've come to believe as a people that technology is the remedy to any disorder, even the ones caused by technology itself. This is perhaps through no fault of our own, since war has shaped most of our history to distill in us a fear of being left behind. So we've kept on running, afraid of looking back. The bright, alluring newness of tomorrow became our focal point in the distance, keeping us balanced. So we believe ourselves just for putting our trust in technology and the convenience technological improvements brings us. We feel justified in how striving for better and more advanced technology is the right thing to do. Convenience is the word of the future, meant to liberate us from our daily struggles. But I hope to shed some light on what the hunt for convenience and the simplification of life through more advanced technology actually entails for the individual, and thus ask the question, can technological advancements truly solve all these problems we face? Or are we not just omitting some very key details in the story of life? And what even are these problems we're referring to?
The slow burn. Start with a question that puts the viewer in the position of the user. When was the last time you struggled to form a thought? Not just recall an answer, but build one. Then follow with, in a world where intelligence is on demand, struggle feels unnecessary, but growth, real, personal growth, is born in struggle.
For my line of reasoning to make sense, I'd first like to dispel the myth of humanity's so-called problems. What even is a problem, and why do we define the times we live in by the alleged problems we stand against? Are problems even real? As people, we face continual personal struggles, whether they be internal or external, and as a species, these issues has the potential to grow in magnitude and become too massive for any sole individual to refute as an obstacle. War, for example, is one such thing. It grows out of something small, like hatred, or, as is more often the case, misunderstanding and greed. And only later does it become a movement, getting droves and droves of people involved. When we talk of systemic issues of our time, I believe this is all we mean by it. Internal or external struggles created on either a personal, based on individuals, or worldly level. Think things like natural disasters or diseases. These struggles then grow like a sponge as more and more people attach themselves to the issue. Yet, even if the problem we talk about is a natural disaster, all systemic issues grow out of people. Always. For we are the ones to define them as such. Humanity creates problems through perspective, then ends up trying to solve them through technology, which only creates more problems in turn. This is what humanity does: innovate, tweak, and refine. These are the cornerstones to how we've managed to build our technocratic society of today. But we can take this a step further, as the truth is that problems are a kind of pretend, a make-believe, ideas we create to give ourselves a direction. The idea of a problem is closer to a type of fiction than the reality of facts of nature, since problems don't exist out in the world, they live through us. A sheer cliff is not a problem unless you're cornered by a pack of wolves with no way of climbing up it. It's all about perspective, since they originate in our values. Problems are true in their sentiment, just like a fictive story or an argument, and we only make them real in our experience and discernment of them. If we remove our perspective, what we're left with are only the facts and a person with thoughts and feelings judging the situation. Our mistake is treating problems as tangible things to eliminate with the use of technology, instead of seeing them as parts of ourselves. We never stop to question in our pursuit for technological advancement whether we thought any of these new and man-made conceptual problems were worth the trade of eradicating an external one. At some point in human history, we stopped striving for mere survival and instead shifted our attention to aim for a deviation from nature, becoming different rather than better. We believe technology has the power to make us kings of the natural order, but this belief only shows how humanity refuses to accept what it is: an animal. We're no better than nature, we're just trying to be different. We often fail to realize how we are ourselves the problem we're trying to solve, and technology can't cure us if we are in fact the infection. And to be completely transparent to what I'm referring to, our ability to think is not a problem. Our thinking mind is not a virus for us to treat with the help of AI. We can't cure what we are, although we sure are trying to.
The quiet irony. This essay was written with the help of an AI, the very thing it warns against. I didn't have to wrestle with the words, or the silence, or my own uncertainty, and that's exactly the problem. Then pause, let the irony sink in, and transition into, convenience is seductive, but the more we let machines think for us, the less we learn to think for ourselves.
The brain is a muscle. We train it by thinking critically, and if we give up our time to do so by letting AI come up with all the answers, we become apathetic and lax. AI is here to solve a problem we don't have. Since when did we ever agree it's better for us if we don't have to think for ourselves? In commercials and interviews today from companies trying to sell their AI models, they depict AI as solving both external and internal problems for us. It solves the problem of remembering details about our schedule. It solves the problem of constructing an argument. It solves the problem of creating art. But it's all up front. The only thing it solves is you having to think for yourself, and in doing so it creates more problems you might fail to see since you're busy appreciating how quickly it managed to write a cohesive email for you. I'm not going to go into any legal gray zones about how AI companies have obtained all their data, which I find to be corruption to a great degree, nor am I going to talk about how AI is affecting real people's livelihoods, threatening workers all over the globe with how easily it can take over basically any job you throw at it, even mine as an artist and writer. There are plenty of other videos for that. No, The real meat I want to get into has less to do about the material consequences of AI and more to do about the personal aspect of us allowing AI to do what we do best: to think. To think is the most human thing there is. We are the act of thinking, and us trying to remove that is an existential suicide. Let's look to philosophy for some deepening of this idea. You've definitely heard of the cogito, René Descartes' famous line, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. But perhaps you haven't stopped to actually analyze it in full, since it's not so obvious how we are to interpret the sentence. Firstly, let's alter the translation of the cogito a bit to make it fit more aptly with Descartes' intended meaning, as John Cottingham points out in his book about Descartes. Rather than reading the cogito as I think, therefore I am, we should instead look at it like this: I am thinking, therefore I am. Which might not seem like that big of a difference, but what the line is trying to convey is how you only actually know you exist in the act, in the present moment as you're doing it, thinking. The cogito is not meant to be timeless. You don't necessarily know you exist just because you can think, but because you are thinking. Your knowledge of your existence is something you only experience as you're doing it. Even if philosophically you can disagree with the cogito on a few grounds. For example, Heidegger argues how the cogito presupposes what it aims to prove, namely the existence of an I to begin with. But there's still some substantial experienced truth at the core of Descartes' sentiment. The act of thinking creates our reality. It shapes our world. It makes us feel real. Thinking is us. Then a question arises when we look at all of this from the viewpoint of how we currently treat generative AI in society. Why would we ever want to get rid of this most fundamental aspect of our existence, the act of thinking, and hand it over to a machine?
The confession. I used to love figuring things out, the thrill of not knowing, the hours spent searching for words. Now, I just ask, and I get the answer, but I'm starting to wonder, what part of me is disappearing each time I skip the struggle?
I can only speak for myself, and I don't even use AI nearly to the same degree as others seem to be. But what I do know is what it feels like to lose yourself, to lose grip on reality, like your thoughts don't belong to you. Bear with me, but this is going somewhere, I hope. For pretty much my entire adult life, I've been dealing with something called depersonalization and derealization disorder. I'm not going to go too much into detail about it. If you wish to learn more, here's some further reading. But it's more or less a condition, usually caused by trauma, stress or panic, where one feels utterly spaced out, either feeling like reality isn't real or oneself isn't. When spaced out, you're not here, and nothing feels as tangible as you know it should, which you can probably imagine isn't very fun of an experience. Why I bring this up here is because what this AI movement of people allowing themselves to disappear, thinking less and less for themselves, seems to me like people edging closer towards the same hell I've lived through in my experience with depersonalization. To live is to think. To think is to know you exist. And trust me, feeling like you don't is one of the worst experiences you can have. To struggle finding an answer may be incredibly annoying, and to discipline yourself with doing hard things may feel excruciating, but at least it gives you something to experience. To lose yourself, not thinking, not existing, means just emptiness. There's nothing to gain from it. There is no life in a thoughtless void. It's definitely easier and more convenient asking an AI chatbot to look up some piece of information for you, rather than having to go to the library and dig through a bunch of books where you might not even find exactly what you're looking for. But why do we even prefer the quick answer to begin with? I believe it's because we're all on the run. We feel we don't have time to read multiple books for the chance of finding an answer that can be generated in half a second by ChatGPT in a sentence or two. We're all being hunted and told to do more than feels feasibly possible. I tend to blame the modern tempo of our neoliberalist society, in which we're never allowed to slow down and appreciate the moment we're having. It's all just about working more, doing more, getting more things done. But perhaps I'm just being a bit spiteful. Although, from my experience, reading those multiple books, even if not always more preferable, is always so much more nourishing. And the best part about it is also the most difficult one. You have to do it yourself. You have to think critically and figure out what you actually need. It's hard, it's cumbersome, and it's definitely not something you can get over with quickly. But whoever said it should be? It's the AI companies that want you to believe it can be made easy and convenient if only you use their product. But they profit on you not knowing or learning anything for yourself, since then you come crawling back, begging them to give you all the answers. Doing hard things is a good thing, because that's when we genuinely learn, and also when we genuinely exist. Thinking and knowing you exist should always be worth more than the trade for convenience. I'd even go so far as to say that knowing you exist, breathing in the acceptance and experience of knowing you're alive, is probably the greatest feeling we as people are free to enjoy at any given time. If you don't agree with me, then that's fine. I'm not here to change your mind. I'm just here to give my perspective. Machine learning and generative AI may be nothing more than a magic trick, and a sinister one at that. But it's up to us if we wish to fall victim to the illusion it performs. But AI is not the problem for me. I choose not to let it think for me. I choose not to let it make me disappear. I choose myself, even if it's more difficult and demands more out of me. We all have that option, and that's good enough for me. How about you?
Excellent question. The sign-off is where you can land your thesis emotionally and ethically. Since the essay's about how using me, AI, might inhibit self-growth, the ending should make the viewer feel self-aware, not just guilty. It should leave them thinking, not just nodding. I could have written this ending for you, sharper, cleaner, faster. But maybe it's better unfinished. Maybe the real ending happens when you close this video and start thinking for yourself again. Fade to black. Silence. What would you like to do next?
We know that as long as men are free to ask what they will, free to say what they think, free to think what they must, science will never regress, and freedom itself will never be wholly lost.
Remember to like and leave a comment about your view on using AI. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.